It's time for me to make one of my favorite African snacks. Join me today while we make some biltong. I like to make biltong a couple of times a year. It is a fantastic snack. It tastes great. It's pretty healthy for you, high in protein and low in carbohydrates. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of my home country. The problem is that meat has got so expensive. I did find another source of meat, and that is there's a couple farmers that do some hunting around here, and they have managed to get me a roe deer. First time butchering a deer on my own, which was a bit of an adventure, but I've had this meat for a little while now. It's been in the freezer. I haven't had a chance to actually make it. I was waiting to do some beef as well. I'm hoping the deer biltong is going to be somewhat similar to kudu biltong, which is one of my favorites back in South Africa and Zimbabwe, but only time will tell, and let's give it a go. It does smell a little more gamey than what I remember kudu smelling like, but who knows, I might come up with something here that I really enjoy. Let's take a look at the dry ingredients. First up is dried coriander seeds. This stuff is essential when making biltong. It has such a lovely flavor and smell. It actually takes me straight back to Africa whenever I smell it or taste it, and I just love the stuff. The other benefit of coriander seeds is that it has an antimicrobial effect. So when we are drying our meat, which is raw meat, anything that's going to help with keeping away the bugs, that's a good thing. The other thing that's going to help with keeping away the bugs is salt. This is helping to preserve the meat, and this here is Himalayan rock salt. You don't have to use that. You can use any salt you want, but yeah, I just had that at hand. We also have some peppercorns. This just adds a fantastic flavor, and we don't need too much of that, but it is essential. I got so much grief in my last biltong video because I use sugar or sweetness inside my biltong recipe. Now, there are probably hundreds of thousands of biltong recipes out there. Many of them have been passed down through the generations. But the thing is, so has this one. I was about 10 years old. I'd been asked by a farmer friend of ours to come and help him track a kudu that needed to be culled. And it was such a great experience. We were out there for about a week on horseback, and it was just great. We tracked down the kudu, and when we put it down, we ended up making pretty much the whole thing into biltong using this basic recipe. And when I make this biltong, it kind of brings me back to that time. It was a fun time in my life, and I have great memories of it. So that's part of this. The other part of it is it just tastes delicious. Anyway, that's my reasons for it. I'm going to stick to it, and I'm going to keep on making it the way I make it. The last ingredient we have here is some chili flakes or chili powder. Now, this is roughly ground up chilies, not very spicy. I've got some bird's eye in there, or peri peri, and I've also got a few others that are not so hot because I don't want this to be burny. I just want it to bring a little bit of a tang, a zing to the biltong. So it's really up to you. If you want to make this very spicy, then go ahead and throw in something even hotter, but this kind of works for me, and I know that Mrs. ChilliChump is not going to fight with me when she tries to eat it. Before I carry on, I just want to say a massive thank you to Shane. Shane is one of my patrons. He hand built this cutting board for me, and I've had it in my hands for a little while now, but I just haven't used it. I've been waiting for the right time, and I think this video is the perfect time for me to christen it. It is a work of art, and it's a shame to actually use it, but that's what it's for. It's to be used. Shane, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Let's get to cutting. So I have, like I said, some deer. So this is roe deer. I also have some beef. This is a lovely cut of beef from Morrison's, I believe it was. So I'm going to cut this one up, and we'll show you how I cut it. Now, the size of the cuts is really down to preference. I like a drier piece of biltong than some people. Some people like it a little bit red on the inside, and I prefer it just completely dry. It's just my preference, really. And to do that, you will need to cut it rather thin. So let's get rid of that. Okay. So that's a lovely cut of meat. I'm looking for the grain because, again, that's something you need to pay attention to, is which way the grain is going. So when you cut it thinner, obviously it dries quicker and it'll dry more thoroughly. You can have very thick cut pieces. Some people will go up to like an inch in thickness. Really is up to you. If you are making this for the first time, I would suggest thinner cuts. You're less likely to go wrong, and you'll figure out also what you like. Now, I have a little bit of a problem here. The grain seems to be going that way. Some of it's going that way. It's kind of coming up like that. It's not ideal. Ideally, you want the grain to be going there. So if you look, the meat here, how it's got these little lines. Not the lines of this stuff. Just don't let that get in the way. When I cut into it, you'll see. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to cut it the way I'd normally like to cut it because the graining is not going in the ideal direction. So let me do this way up. Okay, that's kind of the thickness I like. So if you look on the inside, again, the graining isn't too apparent. I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem. But when you are looking at the meat, when you are cutting it, have a look and see which way the grain's running and try go with the grain, because later when you cut it, so the biltong is going to dry, it's going to be like that. If the grain is going along there, when you're cutting off little bits to chew, it's going to be a lot easier to chew than if the grain's going that way. But really is up to you, again, down to preference. So let's cut this up. Now, the absolute best biltong, in my opinion, is one that has a good amount of fat on it. This doesn't have a heck of a lot, but if you can have fat running along the edge of your biltong, believe me, it tastes amazing. So this is now the deer, and this is going to be a little different from doing beef. It's going to be a lot stronger tasting, and it's also going to be a bit tougher. But I'm interested to see how it turns out. Again, I'm trying to look for where the grain of the meat is, and it looks like we're going across there, so we will make some small cuts. Now for this, I'm going to probably cut a little bit thinner, if anything, but we will see. That's some beautiful meat. And this meat, I'm just going to add it in with the beef that we have over here. There's no reason not to mix it up. This is beautiful meat. After a few hours, you want to turn them over so that they get evenly coated. The meat has been marinating for 12 hours and it's time for us to hang it and start the drying process. I'll be using my biltong box, which I built a good few years back. It still does a fantastic job. However, I do want to build another one because I want to show you guys how to build your own, and also because there's a few things I want to optimize from this build. The Biltong box itself takes advantage of two fundamental processes. One is convection currents, and the other one is relative humidity. So if you want to skip past the little bit of a science lesson, then go ahead. I'll put the timestamp down below, but I'll explain to you a little bit about how this works. If you want, you can start with a plastic bin that you buy, or you could create a wooden box like I've done. The basic concept is you're going to have a heat source down the bottom. I'm using two 100-watt incandescent light bulbs. You're then going to create some holes near the bottom where the heat source is, as well as at the top of the box. The air is heated, which generates a convection current, pulling cold air from the bottom of the box and pushing the hotter air out the top of the box. This produces a gentle breeze across the meat. The other effect of heating the air is that you are reducing the relative humidity. This allows moisture to be removed from the box. Relative humidity is pretty straightforward. If you look at the blue circle, that's cold air, and it can hold a certain amount of moisture. Now, if you heat that air up, it expands, but it still has the same amount of moisture as before. This means the air can now take on more moisture, which results in pulling moisture out of the box, helping to dry the meat. So when you're hanging the meat, you just need to make sure that they don't touch each other. I use these little plastic hooks because, well, they're easy to clean, and the alternative is using little pieces of wire, but never really been a fan of that. But it works. If you don't have these plastic hooks, little pieces of wire will do the job. But yeah, you just hang it, make sure that they aren't touching each other, because where they touch is likely where they're going to get a little bit of mold, and you don't want that. It's been 5 days now and the biltong is finally ready to try. I cannot wait. The smells in here are incredible and it's making me salivate, and I just hope the deer at least tastes a little bit like the kudu biltong that I remember from back home. One thing I will need is my trusty biltong cutter. If you do make a batch of biltong this sort of size, then you can actually freeze it. They freeze very well if you've dried it properly. And it should last at least a year in the freezer, and pull it out for a snack whenever you're ready. Just let it defrost for a couple of hours and it'll be perfect biltong. Over here is the beef, and you can see there's quite a bit of fat on this particular piece. And this one here is the roe deer. So let's cut them both open and see what they look like inside. So I'm just gonna go right down the middle. Oh, look at that. That is just perfect, how I like to see it. Let's have a look at the deer. I'm sure it's going to look pretty similar. Bit of a bigger piece. There you go. And again, looks very, very similar, and I can't wait to try it. Oh, it's just a lovely piece of biltong right there. And let's do a little piece of the beef with some fat. First up, we're going to try the beef and see how we've done. Oh, that looks amazing. Smells amazing. And tastes amazing. Man, I love biltong. The deer I've cut a little bit thick, so I'm going to just slice it a bit thinner. Well, not a lot thinner, but anyway. Let's try the deer. Beef, it's not a gamey meat, of course. If you eat beef, then you'll know that. This does smell a little gamey, but it's not overbearing. Let's give it a try. Definitely taste the difference. I am happy with that. Little chewier than the beef. I'm sure that some of the cuts of the deer will be a bit more tender than this, but honestly, that's why you use a cutter like this, so you can cut thin slices and snack on it. But That is so tasty. And the fact that it's less than half the price of beef, I think I'll be doing it again. I think the real trick is, so when I bought this deer, it was at a time of the season, and I'm sure you guys that are hunters will know far more about this than me. The guy who I bought it from was telling me about this. He said that the time of the season is very important. If the deers are, during rutting season, if they're, putting out pheromones and all that sort of thing, then the meat can be quite strong smelling, and that's not ideal. It's definitely better to get it at the right time of season. So if you're a hunter, or if you know someone that hunts and you can get hold of some deer, then get some advice from them. I'm sure they'll be able to advise you of the best time to get the deer. But this tastes phenomenal. Definitely be making some more of that, especially with the prices of beef these days. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you go make yourself some biltong as well. Just a reminder, this is completely different to beef jerky. Totally different. The whole process and definitely the flavors. If you've never had biltong before, don't let the first time you have it be that stuff that you get at the supermarkets in the packets. It's just not the same. It does not taste anywhere close to what this tastes like. Try and make it for yourself. It really isn't difficult. You don't need a big biltong box like I have here. You can do it for far cheaper. The most expensive part is always going to be the meat. You want some decent quality meat, but the biltong box itself, there are so many different ways to build it. If you're interested in me showing you some ways from free right through to making something like this, then let me know in the comments below. And if you guys are interested, I will do a video on that. It's just such a great snack to have when you're having a beer, when you're watching the rugby, Formula One, whatever sports you watch. It just brings back memories of Africa for me as well. And puts a smile on my face. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Until then, stay spicy.